Welcome to National Pension Partners, where retirement planning meets peace of mind. Today, we're diving into the 412(e)(3) plan, also known as a fully insured pension plan. This isn't just any retirement plan. It's the gold standard for stability and guaranteed benefits. How does it work? Simple. It's funded exclusively by life insurance and annuity contracts. This means no market risks, no actuarial assumptions, just ironclad guarantees. Think of it like this. You're a small business owner who hates surprises. The 412(e)(3) plan gives you predictable, stable contributions every year. Your future benefits are backed by insurance contracts, so you know exactly what you're getting. No guesswork, no headaches. But there's more. These plans are designed to maximize your contributions and offer significant tax advantages. And with National Pension Partners, you're not just getting a plan, you're getting a team of experts, attorneys, CPAs, actuaries, all dedicated to making your retirement as secure as possible. We provide personalized consulting, ensuring that your plan is tailored to your specific needs. Best part, initial consultations and proposals are absolutely free. $0, zero commitment. So if you want a retirement plan that's as reliable as your morning coffee, head over to nationalpensions.com. With the 412(e)(3) plan, your future is in safe hands. Retirement planning never sounded so thrilling. Perfect for small business owners who like their finances as predictable as Monday mornings. Stable contributions, ironclad guarantees, and serious tax advantages. It's the trifecta of financial security. And with National Pension Partners, you get a team of brainiacs, attorneys, CPAs, actuaries, ensuring your retirement is as secure as Fort Knox. Oh, did we mention the free consultations? That's right. You get a personalized expert proposal with $0 down. So, if you want a retirement plan that's as reliable as your morning coffee, head over to nationalpensions.com. Because when it comes to your future, boring is the new exciting. Retirement planning never sounded so thrilling. For more details, check out National Pension Partners at nationalpensions.com. Retirement planning never sounded so thrilling.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Economics with the Honorable David M. Walker, the former Comptroller General of the United States. I'm Nick Palavito. I'll be your moderator today. And today we have a very important topic that we're going to be discussing. And this is something that is affecting not just us, but everybody around the world. And that deals with tariff, trade, and taxes. And because it deals with problems throughout the world, we're going to bring in a couple of our correspondents who are around the world. First of all, out of the Bangladesh and Asia area, we're going to bring in Dr. Sharif Rana to see what his thoughts are. And then as we move to Canada, we have, of course, Alexander Starr, who can give us his thoughts on this. So we'll start with Dr. Sharif. I don't know if you've noticed that the United States has imposed tariffs on everybody. And the market has, of course, responded quite well by dropping trillions of dollars here in the United States. I don't know, what are you seeing over in Asia? What are the thoughts, or does this big tidal pool even hit you guys over there?
Yeah, this is actually very interesting things we are observing right now in Bangladesh. Even previously, the 2 episodes I shared that maybe the government of different countries from emerging economy, they will try to negotiate with the US government. According to my concept, I see today, Dr. Muhammad Yunus, he already declared, he is our country chief of advisor. He declared that he is requesting Mr. Donald Trump wait for 3 months. This is the request for Bangladesh, because Bangladesh heavily dependent on US market, because Bangladesh has to export a lot of garments related products and other accessories to US market. Even today, I'm discussing few of the businessmen, and I'm observing the national newspaper. I'm finding those who have regular business with USA already they are getting email from USA. The US businessman they want more time to take Bangladesh products. Uh, that is the things. It's actually everybody. Also, I'm observing from White House that they are declared that many countries like Bangladesh they want to negotiate these things with USA. So that is the predictions I'm sharing last two episodes. Beside that, in Bangladesh right now today, the investment summit happening in Bangladesh. So many investment companies from North America, from China, from Japan, and in many countries, they are coming to Bangladesh. They are planning to invest in Bangladesh, and Bangladesh government want to open up these things. Regarding these tariff issues,
This is
honestly, honestly speaking, I have some interesting thought on particular issues because I can understand the Asia Pacific as my economic forum has
I'm
to
going to resend the link to you.
go with
Okay.
different kind of business dialogues and everything in Asia Pacific. I'm observing that the other countries, let's say bilateral relationship, let's say Bangladesh between Japan, Bangladesh between China, in between this Asia Pacific market. They are trying to negotiate each other's. Also, the European market and the Asia Pacific market, they come close together to solve this problem. There is two chances. One chance is if Donald Trump can understand that this tariff may cause lot of economical damage for global economy and for his country, and he opened the door for negotiations. On the other hand, there is another chance. The Asia Pacific countries like China, South Korea, Japan, Singapore, even Middle East market or South Asian markets, they come together. They do go more bilateral agreement and business, and Europe also participate with Asia Pacific. There is a chance, there is a chance I'm predicting that in that situations maybe USA face lot of financial and economical troubles. And I don't know, maybe if Trump continue this process, maybe more financial challenge he has to face in USA.
Yeah, well, now we're going to hear from our friends in Canada. We'll see what Sasha Starr has to say. Apparently, this trade war has been escalating between the United States and Canada. So, what's going on over there?
Um, it's a very interesting question. There are several layers of this issue that I'd like to mention. Number one, Trump's he is unlike any elected uh, individuals in all these countries that you just mentioned before. And he normally, each country, whether it's France or Japan or just Germany, they elect their leader, and that leader is responsible, together with his cabinet, to the people who elected him. In United States, it's a very, very different situation. Trump was elected, this is true, but he has no duties to protect people who actually elected him. It's vice versa. I think Trump is even enjoying his power over the people that he been elected. For example, futures today, they open down and they sort of trying to recover in the mid morning. No, not mid morning, early morning. I would say around 6 in the morning, 6:30, and then Trump went with True Social his post, and he said that the tariffs are here to stay and nobody is going to negotiate or so on. Immediately, the futures went down from that point on right away. The market opened down, trying to recover, but that's a different story. So, what was his purpose of getting on through social with this announcement, which is very negative for the market, because all market now hopes that somehow it will be negotiated, somehow it will be maybe adjusted one way or another. So no, he kills that hope right away, early morning, so to inflict even more pain. But this is minor thing. The major thing is that his grievances about trade imbalance, because that's what it is, and that's how the tariffs were calculated on the imbalance, trade imbalance of each country that the US is trading with. First of all, let us understand what is the trade balance. Let's see if I'm going to the restaurant and I spend $100 on a dinner. Okay, that immediately creates trade imbalance between myself and the restaurant. Now, restaurant got my $100 and he's in plus 100 and I'm in minus 100. Well, of course, I used it to purchase some goods, services, some food, whatever. It doesn't matter, but it creates trade imbalance. So the trade imbalance, because Americans are so much richer and better to do than the rest of the world. So this is a normal thing that there could be a trade balance between America, the richest and the most prosperous nation in the world, and all other countries. Now, does it mean that it's a bad thing for the United States? Not, of course. It just shows how affluent America and American people are. So why would you fight something that just proves affluency of America and its people? So the thing what you should have grievances and emphasizes and trying to readjust is, for example, the fact that European Union in fact charges more for U.S. goods than vice versa. And they have VAT systems that in America it doesn't have, at least in the same way as in Europe, and some other ways. So you can definitely ask for adjustment in this rather than go all in 20% tariffs on all European goods on top of what you will charge for autos and so on. So this is not well prepared, not well thought out action. It wiped out trillions of dollars from the investors, and most of them are American investors in the U.S. stock market. And so, therefore, now the question is whether the perceived pluses of this action will outweigh the obvious minuses, which are very evident.
Mhm. And what are these perceived pluses, Sasha? In other words, if you were president, you were going to install all these tariffs on all these countries all around the world all at once. What is the benefit for doing it?
Well,
Sasha?
the benefits, okay. Number one scenario is that a lot of companies from all countries will come to US, open their production facilities to avoid taxes. Now, it's very questionable financial undertaking, because the time required, the capital investment required, the training required, and I'm not sure in today's production, which is very sophisticated, I don't think that America is the right place to invest, because in US you will not find enough well-trained, productive people who can work on these lines also. This is a 20th or even 19th century idea to bring production to US. US is doing extremely well in its software business, AI business, the um, chip business. By the way, movie business. entertainment industry. You don't count that because all over the world people are purchasing US movies and US shows and everything else. But you don't put that into equation because Europe, or for that matter, all the world, the rest of the world, they don't have equivalent product to sell in the United States with very, very little exceptions. So that's where US is so far ahead of the rest of the world, and that's not being taken into consideration. So this is very, very poor execution. The right ideas, I would agree that Europeans and maybe some other countries should lower their tariffs and their taxes on US goods. I agree with that. It's just how you deal with that. And I think what's happened right now, it's a wrong deal. There could be consequences. Yes, I've heard over the 50 countries are now trying to contact White House to renegotiate. That's a good step. But there are 180 countries hit with these tariffs, so it remains 130 countries which are not calling to White House to renegotiate, and that a little bit worrisome.
Okay, it seems like we've been joined by the Honorable David M. Walker, former Comptroller General of the United States. We're discussing tariff, trade, and taxes. I know there was Liberation Day last week, and all I could see is it liberated my pocketbook big time, where I lost tens of thousands of dollars and I didn't do anything. I was going like, are you kidding me? That's my liberation. So I don't like to lose money, David. So I am not happy. Okay, you have no idea. So what are your thoughts on this tariff, trade, and tax deal that we're seeing? You're muted.
No.
Can you hear him, Rick?
No.
Oh, we have audio issues.
I know what the problem is.
Okay, now you're coming in. No.
Nope.
It was there a little bit and then it left. No Moss?
Well, shoot, because I want to find. I mean, he's the most expert of all the experts.
I know. I want to hear what you had to say, David. You think if the microphone working?
I think he can join again.
Oh yeah, he can dial in. Okay, well we have to go to our second team, reach into our bench. Oh, there's Rick Rosner.
Well, I just wanted, like, it appears that everybody calculating the tariffs and in the White House is an idiot. Like, we know Peter Navarro is an idiot, and he's like one of the point men on this. And I looked him up, and apparently before 2016, he was a decent, economic analyst. But then he started kissing Trump's ass 10 years ago, trying to get a job in the White House, and he became a lunatic like the rest of them.
Yeah, well, all I can tell you for me personally, as I've been following Sasha's show, Modern Investing, Sasha, how we have your fund portfolio. My fund portfolio isn't fun anymore. Let's put it that way, because my fund portfolio is red. Now, I'm very fortunate. I pushed a lot into cash for different reasons. So it's not like, hey, Nick, you're going to go broke. But, at the same time, I don't like sitting around just losing money. To me, losing money is not a happy thing. I like making money. I'm a greedy capitalist. So anyway, we're joined by Kim Calhoun. I don't know if she's seeing a lot of red lately, too, with this Liberation Day. All I can see about Liberation Day, it liberated my pocketbook.
So what's happened in the last half hour is rumors came out that Trump was going to postpone the tariff. And then hold on, and then the market went way back up, almost to zero for the day, and then the White House denied the rumors, and it started going back down.
Really great when you have a great day on Wall Street when you go to 0%. That's wonderful.
David, no lie that it's been a trampoline market. But what I want to ask people is to consider a few things. And it's funny because I've been asking this, just do the math before you jump one way or the other or say anything about, oh, it's going to do this or that. People say, oh, the tariffs are going to force more manufacturing in the United States. Well, for all of you microwave people who want your stuff now, and for less than what you get it in China, I want you to do the math of what it takes to either bring a manufacturing facility that's old up to standards and train the people and put them back in, but also do the math of what it costs to employ an American. Generally, you're going to pay not just their salary, but workers' comp, which is mandatory and is generally 1/3 of their income, on top of other benefits. Plus, you're going to have to buy what? The resources to manufacture, which come from where? Maybe where those tariffs are. So if you have to wait for those, your turnaround time to produce anything in this country under manufacturing, under all of this new chaos, the turnaround time is going to be about 1 to 5 years. Ford has been building a manufacturing facility for 4 years now to manufacture some vehicles here in the United States. Plus, you need that money. Now, if you're an investor or a stockholder, are you going to want to do that? Or are you going to do what the Nike guy just said? You know what? It's still cheaper for me to pay the 40% tariff in China, have the products manufactured in China and sell everywhere else. I still make a better turnaround time. I don't have to wait for anything. And my profits are bigger because at the end of the day, your stockholders are going to look at the profit. So no one looked at all why manufacturing was outsourced to begin with and how to prevent it. And that, my dear friends, is the biggest problem. But the number one thing no one has looked at that reflects on right now, because a con man diverted your attention, because everyone's saying, oh, it's making the trade tariff, fair. All right, that's not why he started this. He started this because Canada told him no. And you know what, Trump? No means no. They don't want to be part of the state. No means no. And he got mad. So he's using it to extort them to say yes. Who else does that? I mean, what other character type can't understand no? So I would just say this wasn't about you. This wasn't about the people or the economy or bringing manufacturing back to the United States, because quite honestly, nobody even here has done the math for that. But this is purely about the fact that he was told, no, I don't want to be part of the states. And that's where we need to reflect this on. How is that going to impact their decision? And how does it impact the economy in general, just to extort a country to become part of your country? That's what people should be looking at.
Let's see if we can hear from David.
Yeah, let's see if we hear from David. We had some problems.
Hi, David.
Yep. Now?
No.
I don't know.
You might have a loose connection because your voice is in and out.
Yeah.
No, I think it's the internet. I think it's, can you do an internet, test your internet speed on your device?
There's nothing wrong with it.
Wait, now we can hear you.
You're perfect.
There you are.
All right. I don't know what the problem was. All right.
Okay, you solved it. Okay, here we go.
I respectfully disagree with my friend Kim. Trump has been talking about trade inequities for 40 years. All right. So this is not new, and he may have been upset based upon the response that the Canadians gave, but he shouldn't have been upset because the Canadians want to stay independent. That's understandable. And I don't know that he was serious, quite frankly. He could have been joking about that. You never know with Trump. But let me tell you what I'm concerned about. What I'm concerned about is I don't like it when people lie to me. And there's a big lie with regard to the tariff situation. The president talked about the fact that he wanted to have reciprocal tariffs. Well, most people would think that means, okay, if somebody, for example, tariffing our cars 10% and we're only tariffing their cars 2%, then that means that either we have to get together at 2% or 10% or someplace in between or zero.
Right.
That's not what was unveiled last week. What was unveiled last week was not a reciprocity with regard to the actual tariff rate. It was a calculation of the degree of trade imbalance that we have with the respective countries, with a plug on what the tariff rate would have to be. And the explanation was the difference is non-tariff trade barriers. That's totally made up. Okay. And so the bottom line is the effective tariffs that are being proposed are much, much higher than the markets anticipated. And that's why we've taken a hit. Yes, Trump may want to end up onshore more manufacturing and sourcing. He may well want to do that. But Kim is right to say that's not something you can flip a switch and do. That takes years to be able to do. In addition, you have to calculate the total cost. You know, corporations don't have duties of loyalty to countries. They have duty of loyalty to shareholders. And their job is to maximize shareholder return. And so you've got to do the kind of calculations that Kim talked about, right? So I'm hoping that over time that reason is going to prevail, and we'll end up having a more we will avoid a tariff war, and we'll have more reasonable and equitable tariff situations between various countries. But it takes a long time to be able to negotiate tariffs with the number of countries we're dealing with here. And I think until there is a breakthrough where we actually have an agreement with a meaningful partner, whether that be, China, whether that be the EU or whatever, I think the markets are going to still be very skittish. I think there'll be a buying opportunity at some point.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we're there yet. That's my personal view. And then at some point, when we get past tariffs, I want to talk about the budget proposal and what's included with regard to taxes in that, because that happened within the last week too. By the way,
the GDP was reported as well, but and I would like to see what the real values are, because I think they've been falsely represented on the internet. It would be nice just to see it like from one real source, as opposed to everyone reporting their own opinion of these things. But I agree with you on that, David, that there has been some unfair trade, but did Trump put a tariff on his products that he has manufactured in other countries and he sells over here in Elon's, or did he just put tariffs on certain products?
My understanding is it's pretty much across the board. I don't know where the Trump watches are made, or the Trump shoes, or the whatever. Personally, I have a huge problem with commercializing the presidency. I've just got a huge problem.
I agree with you on that.
Well, let's see what Sasha says from Canada. Is Canada still talking to us, Sasha? I guess you're still here.
Okay, we'll see what's happened with Canada so far. Canada and Mexico were untouched with this liberation idea. I would like to mention that people, when they're talking about trade imbalance, because this is really at the heart of this new tariffs what Trump presented. It's not unfair trade barriers, a trade imbalance. But as I said before, what means trade balance? It means that one affluent country with a very well-to-do people can afford to buy products of other country, which creates imbalance. But is imbalance really bad? Let's see, if I said before, if I'm going to the restaurant and spend $100 for a dinner, then it creates imbalance. The restaurant took my $100, so it's in plus 100, and I spent $100 and I minus $100. It creates immediate trade imbalance. But is it bad for me if I can afford it and I want to have a good meal and I paid and I even put 20% tip on top of it? So how bad is trade balance in this case? Now people don't account for entertainment industry, movies, shows, everything what America produces in abundance. It's being bought all over the world without any equivalent of goods, services, or anything supplied to the United States. They just don't have that magnitude of entertainment production industry that United States have. So this is, in my opinion, is not well written, well calculated, well thought out process, which was unleashed on April 2nd. Number two, Trump needs something desperately, simply because 100 days are over in a couple of weeks or so, and he has absolutely nothing except border with Mexico. He has nothing positive to report to American people, to the Congress, to anybody. It's a failure after failure after failure. You start with this peace negotiations between Ukraine and Russia. Nothing happening there. It's just he, with this negotiations, so-called, he allows a Russian completely destroy Ukrainian cities, kill children and women and all defenseless citizens. That's what's happening there on the front line. Now people will remember Biden economy as a miracle. The stock market was going up. Everybody was happy. Yeah, Biden is a little bit old. He sometimes he doesn't say what he's supposed to say.
He was out of it.
Yeah, but the economy did so well. Everything was working. Trump is a narcissist. He's a gambler. How you can provide a ruling of economy to a gambler who had several bankruptcies, impeachments, and the behavior that's not being tolerated in a normal person, never mind the president of the biggest and the strongest country in the world. This is a really horrible situation. Now, about the tariffs, there are three scenarios which are all possible with all different countries. Number one scenario, that they will swallow it and just, yeah, okay. Or you put 34% tariffs on it. Oh, okay, too bad. Another group, which already is calling 50 some countries, calling to Trump to renegotiate. That's number two scenario. Number three scenario, guess what? And in my opinion, the most likely scenario, there will be a new trade associations of different countries in Europe, in Asia, everywhere, and they will try to continue to trade, maybe even without any barriers among themselves, and just not to invite America in any new associations, and just let America be alone, do whatever it wants. But we're trying to insulate their countries from these calamities.
Yeah, David.
Well, first, I agree with Sasha that the trade policy that was unveiled last week was not well thought out. I also agree that President Trump's record with regard to economic issues, which is what most people care about because most people vote in their pocketbook, has not been good today. And I do also agree with Sasha that the one accomplishment he does have is border security and related actions that he's taken there, but that with regard to the international situation, not a whole lot of progress has been made with regard to Russia and with regard to the Middle East. And so I think, he needs to focus on rethinking his policy with regard to these tariffs. He needs to provide more certainty, and if he wants to get more stability in the markets in the near term. And then they also face a challenge with regard to what's going to end up happening with regard to their tax proposals. Both the House and the Senate have now passed budget resolutions. The Senate passed one last week, and quite frankly, it's irresponsible and unacceptable. And even the House Budget Committee chair said that it was unserious, but because they're not talking about making any significant spending reductions that are guaranteed, and yet at the same point in time, they not only want to extend all the Trump tax cuts from 2017, they want to add new tax cuts on top of that. So Washington is just totally out of touch and out of control. And I think, the next few months are going to tell us whether or not they're going to end up getting serious or not, because right now they're not on the right path.
Okay, David, are these tax cuts, are they going to create a bigger debt and a bigger deficit for the United States? Deficits are on an annual basis. Debt is our cumulative, we're in the hole. Are these tax cuts going to create more problems?
Well, both bills make the situation worse as compared to current law.
Mhm.
The Senate is worse than the House bill. The
Whoa.
Senate has aspirational spending reductions. The House has actual spending reductions. But in both cases, they want to argue current policy baseline rather than current law. Now, the biggest difference between current policy baseline and current law is current policy assumes that all the tax cuts will continue indefinitely. All right. Whereas current law shows that the tax cuts are supposed to expire the end of this calendar year. That's a big difference. It's trillions of dollars.
Okay, so all this talk about we're going to cut government waste so we can basically lower the debt, lower the deficit that Elon Musk was talking about is just fake. Would that be correct?
Well, no. The alleged savings that Doge is going to achieve, and they will achieve some savings, but the alleged savings is grossly overstated. There's no way they're going to come close to achieving $1 trillion. Okay. And again, if you end up looking at reports, they claim that they've saved 140 billion already, although you can only verify about 14 billion.
But if you save 500 billion, but then you give tax cuts for another 500 billion, you went nowhere financially. So the U.S. isn't going anywhere financially. Would that be correct?
You're still increasing the debt, and in both the House and the Senate and the Senate bills, debt to GDP will go up as compared to the status quo. And we already know that the status quo is unacceptable and unsustainable. So I would say that unserious is a word that can apply to a lot of things going on right now in Washington, D.C.
Yeah. Yes, Sasha.
Yeah, one of the ideas of this new tariffs was to encourage overseas manufacturers to set up shops in the United States, and it was claimed that $6 trillion was committed and so on. Now, let's see, European manufacturer decides to set up shop in the United States to avoid this new tariffs. What's happened is these tariffs are renegotiated or removed in total in, say, next few months. In the meantime, he's already committed and starts spending money to build up the structure for his manufacturing facilities and all that stuff. It's becoming uncompetitive even before it started. So you might as well abandon that project, lose hundreds of millions of dollars, and just call it quits. So how you can commit to a new investments in the United States when all this tariff situation is so uncertain, so unpredictable, it could change one way or another any given time. Now, speaking on the same theme, I would like to mention that a lot of I have a few friends in a car manufacturing business, and it's very intricate production. There are a lot of details going into car that favors countries, specifically Germany, with their set of so-called Mittelwoche facilities. It's a medium-size factories which are run by generations, and they're producing certain very high quality, high demand products, which I'm not saying that it's impossible to produce in US, but it's close to it simply because U.S. just doesn't have that quality of production. It just doesn't have generations of workers who can produce very sophisticated details. If their children, grandchildren, if they're successful, they're going into insurance or merger and acquisition business or anything like that. They're not going to spend their lifetime to create these details. So in many cases, this production facilities, it's a facade without any meaning. U.S. manufacturing, all concept is the 19th and 20th century. What manufacturers? You can manufacture anything in other countries, but not in US, because in US you will pay top wages for mediocre quality production. Anybody needs it?
Unbelievable. David, what do you think about the timing on this? In other words, right now we're seeing the stock market pretty well getting hammered. How long does Donald Trump have to turn the ship around before there's a mutiny on the bounty? Because I can tell you, my wealthy clients aren't going to stand for another self-induced depression or recession. So how long does he have before he turns the ship around?
I think there has to be a change in course and clarity this month.
Right. That's what I was thinking. I was saying, that was my thought exactly. I was saying, if he doesn't turn the ship around in 30 days, he's going to find himself being Captain Bligh on an island somewhere, and it's not going to be as nice as Pitcairn Island, because wealthy people hate to lose money, especially what's unnecessary. You know, we do understand a certain amount of risk, we lose money, but just self-inflicted, we don't like that. Sasha, I don't know about you, but I'm not a happy camper when I watch my fund portfolio.
You see, what Trump is doing, he's using his playbook of real estate negotiations. When you are playing these games that, okay, I don't need your property, just keep it. Okay, I'll give you another $10,000. So essentially, he is it's a zero-sum game when you win and your counterpart is losing. That's the end of the story. Now here he is playing with the lives and savings of millions, tens of millions of people. This is what really is unacceptable. And this is where American people, the day of reckoning and stock market's end of correction is not so far away. The only thing is what is needed now is a complete capitulation of the investors. We need stories about people jumping out of the windows, the stockbrokers are shooting themselves, and so on. When these stories will become really talk of the day, then we will know that we are close to capitulation, and maybe there will be some kind of positives jump in the stock market prices.
So what you're saying is you decide to buy stocks when you start hearing about stockbrokers jumping out of buildings in Wall Street, right, Sasha?
That's a total capitulation. I mean, there will be some rebounds, like hopefully today there is an attempt to rebound. It's going to be short-lived. It's going to be maximum 2-3 days, and probably upside maybe 10% from where the market is. And that's it. Then the market will collapse even lower and lower until there will be a total capitulation. It's not there yet. Therefore, the market will continue to go down.
Yeah,
Mark, I had a quick question for David and everything based on something that I had reported on World Edition earlier today and everything, but I'd love to hear your thoughts about this. The Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, on Sunday dismissed concerns that Americans have about a potential impending recession and the status of their retirement plan, saying that President Donald Trump and his administration are building the long-term economic fundamentals for prosperity. And he also said that Americans looking to retire aren't concerned about the day-to-day markets. So what would your answer be to Scott Bessent about that? And do you agree with his assessment?
I know that people always say, don't look at day-to-day. And generally, from a personal standpoint, I generally look at things once a week at the end of the week. But when you have as much volatility as we've had in the last few days, we've had as significant declines as we've had in the last few days, you're kidding yourself to think that the American people aren't aware of that and aren't concerned about that. They may or may not look at their 401k balances, but they know they're not going up. They just don't know how much they're going down. I think the other thing that they forget about is, unfortunately, America is very myopic. It's very nearsighted. It's focused on the short term. They may be well intentioned with regard to saying, gee, there's going to be short term pain, but we're going to have long term gain. We're going to onshore more, U.S. manufacturing, et cetera. But that's a ways down the road. And most people don't have that long term vision. And therefore, most people will view negatively any significant reduction in the market that doesn't result in some type of a turnaround within a reasonable period of time. Okay, and so I think the Treasury Secretary spoke based on wishful thinking rather than what a vast majority of Americans actually think.
Yeah, Ken, then Jacoby, and Sasha.
You're on mute, Kim. You're on mute, Kim.
Okay, so David, that's, what you say is probably true. It's all very long term. But when you're talking about onshoring manufacturing, which, I have no problems developing institutions that provide more jobs. But the problem we run into is, for years we get started and then everything gets outsourced. What are we doing to prevent that from happening? Because people will invest a lot of money in their education, a lot of money in their children's education, in the resources surrounding the community for these manufacturing facilities like they're doing with Blue Oval. But then, they get it going and the stockholders and everybody goes, you know what? I can still do this cheaper over here. My GPM is this big. So what are we doing to prevent that from happening?
Well, look, from a practical standpoint, what the government can do is try to be able to maintain competitive taxation and competitive regulatory policies. That's the government has control over. The government doesn't have direct control over certain other factors. For example, people make more money in the United States than they do in China, than they do in Vietnam, than they do in India. We have tougher environmental standards. We have tougher labor standards, than they do in those. And so the bottom line is that we understand that in some cases countries produce better products than we do. In some cases, countries can produce a competitive product for a lot lower cost, and you're not going to eliminate that. Okay, so I think unfortunately, what they're relying upon is that a vast majority of the American people are not very knowledgeable and not very sophisticated with regard to these issues. So therefore, when you say things like we're focusing on fairness, we're focusing on reciprocity. Well, most people can say, okay, I'm for fairness. Reciprocity is reasonable, but that's not what they're doing.
All right. Jacoby, you have a comment.
So my question more comes in of when will we be honest? Because, for example, the tariffs themselves, that's not a long-term view. That's really, they used they made up an equation based off of false information. Well, basically they used the trade deficit to create some equation to come up with some arbitrary number that they can say, hey, this is what reciprocity is, which it's not. It's basically it's telling a lie. And then in terms of bringing those jobs back, those jobs are not coming back. Many of them are going to deal with automation and products that are already going to be taking your jobs anyway. That's why a lot of the jobs ended up disappearing in the first place. So my thing is, when are we going to be honest, start investing more into education to get us to those higher paying jobs, transferring us from the old industries, because we're not bringing back making shoes. That's not happening in the US. And we're now going to tariff those shoes to a point that you cannot afford the shoes. Nobody's going to be making shoelaces in the US. Nobody's making ties the way that Donald Trump is buying his. So I guess I'm saying all this again to get back to the question of, when are we going to be honest about the automation, the particular jobs that are not coming back? When are we going to actually take away the tariffs from those actual markets that we're never going to be able to produce coffee beans here? It's just not working.
Well, first, I think understand we cannot and do not want to compete based on wages. We're going to continue to be we have to compete based on innovation, based upon quality, based upon productivity. That's how we have to compete. And when you say, all right, well, what does it take for that? Well, it takes a great education system. Well, unfortunately, our education system has declined in the last several decades rather than improved. It takes appropriate investments in research and development. I'm talking about basic research. Companies can do applied research. We're doing too much consumption and not enough investment. Okay, and so there are a number of things that I think that we need to step back, figure out what are the fundamentals, what can we do, what can we not do. Let's focus on making changes in areas where we actually do have some influence, and recognizes the reality that we've got to compete on innovation, productivity, and quality, not cost.
Yeah, Sasha.
David, you just mentioned a few minutes ago about that what we are witnessing now, it's a short-term pain for long-term gain. It's a flawed concept. I'll tell you why, David. Because short-term pain is right here, right now. It's a tangible, it's a real, and long-term growth or whatever is there. It's very questionable and it's very iffy at the best. And I'll tell you why. Because if you will take all 180 countries, let's say a third is calling to Trump, begging to negotiate. Another third will take, okay, tariffs, okay. It's not a country's problem. It's a problem of each particular manufacturer. So the country is, whether it's Ireland or Pakistan, it just doesn't matter. Okay, so tariffs, okay, so there are tariffs. It's not a governmental headache. And finally, the most dangerous is another third headed by China and European Union, which are going to retaliate and retaliate big. Because now it's everything is in price. Now it's all or nothing. There is no middle ground. And even that scenario, and I'm being fair, I'm divided in three categories, equal, maybe they're not equal, but it doesn't really matter. The idea is that China is already there, announced. European Union is going to announce by midweek the latest. So what's in it for United States? Very little. So there is still more pain if it's not enough, what's already happened, and very doubtful long-term gains. Would you agree with that?
Well, I would agree that most Americans are focused on the short term, and they know that they're experiencing pain now. They're being told that there may be longer term gain. They don't know whether or not that'll happen, but they know that the short term pain is happening. And they can feel it. I mean, it's something that directly affects them. I think the other issue you have is, to the extent that there are going to be higher tariffs and there is going to be some retaliation, then what is that going to do with regard to prices? Because we had made some progress on bringing down inflation, The last thing I think that people want right now is to say inflation start going back up. Now, just because there are higher tariffs doesn't necessarily mean that prices are going up, because they may look for alternative suppliers. They may end up absorbing some of the additional cost through reduced profits. Who knows? But it's sure not going to help. And so, unfortunately, though, Sasha, I will tell you that there are some areas where you have to do short-term pain in order to get long-term gain. And one of them is a topic that we've talked about a lot, and that is we need to put our finances in order. We're spending too much. There's a huge gap between how much we're spending and how much in revenues we're taking in. We're going to have to make tough choices to where we spend less and we generate more revenues to close that gap.
David, but you will close that gap. In the meantime, the country is in pain, and pain is now and real. And all these long-term gains, it may or may not materialize. It's not for certain. In fact, in certain scenarios, it will be long-term pain. So it will be short-term pain, and whoever will survive will have then long-term pain.
That's the problem.
Well, there's a difference, Sasha. I think there's a difference between the issue that we're talking about now, which is tariffs and the possibility for a trade war, retaliation, and things of that nature. I think there's a difference between that and putting your finances in order. Because if we don't put our finances in order, I can assure you the long-term pain will be greater.
I disagree with you, because if you will prevent the depression, never mind recession, recession.
I'm not talking about the trade issue, the tariffs issue. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the fact that no country is exempt from the laws of prudent finance. You can't spend a lot more money than you make, charge a credit card, not have a day of reckoning. Every major power in history has lost superpower status when it.
Well, U.S. is losing superpower status right now, and this short-term pain and long-term pain and recession with possible depression, it doesn't help you. Even if you will decrease your deficit by $1 trillion or $2 trillion, it's not going to change anything, David. It's just leave it to future generations, your generation, my generation, or whatever, even people younger than we are not happening be in a position to do anything about this deficit.
Well, in our Constitution, Sasha, in the preamble of our Constitution, our founders had the word posterity, which means that our job is not just to generate positive results today, not just to leave things better off when we leave than when we came, but better positioned for the future. The word is stewardship, and I'm one who still believes in that, although we're not exercising it right now, and that's a problem.
David, has anybody reminded this to Donald Trump in his first term when he increased the deficit by $8 trillion? Joe Biden?
The last president who was fiscally responsible was Clinton. And I'm supposed to see Donald Trump tomorrow night at a black tie dinner.
Nice. Well, I'm sure you'll have some good questions, but generally speaking, too, when you're doing events like that, you don't want it to be all 100% dogging them with your own agenda.
No, that's right.
Right, because I've done that before. I've had breakfast with senators, and everybody goes, "Ask him." I go, "No, that's not what this is about.
It's not the right venue."
Right. It's not. I mean, there are right times and right places. I do want to bring up manufacturing again, because this is just a huge concern of mine when we're investing in this. And if you take a look at Blue Oval as the example, about 4 years ago, they agreed to shut down manufacturing in China and build and bring it all to America. And one of the things it did do is provide contracting jobs in America for the supposed next 5 years is what they predicted before they opened the manufacturing facility. That manufacturing facility has been delayed by another 18 months. You're talking about, close to what, $80 billion when they're all said and done, doing this manufacturing facility. But the reason why it was incentivized, and David, I bring this up because you said this, is because the government gave them a purchase order to build this. They said, if you build this, we will buy XYZ from you. So they had a means to borrow money, or a means to say, okay, it's worth the investment because we'll start generating revenue the day we start manufacturing and things leave the floor. A lot of manufacturing facilities will not have money up front or a purchase order to borrow against. And this gets very challenging when you say you want to bring manufacturing to the United States. I liked what just happened, if it's true, that Taiwan decided a 0% tariff. I think it does need to happen. I think that tariffs need to become zero across the board. I still don't understand. And maybe, David, one day you can explain it to us, how and why and where the math came from for all the tariffs that exist today.
But we're probably going to have to do that on a future show because we're out of time. We want to thank the Honorable David M. Walker, the former Comptroller General of the United States, our correspondents in Canada and Asia, our viewership around the world in 150 countries. And hopefully, David, you can help Donald turn the ship around, because some of us, we just don't like losing money.
Have fun.
We'll see you next week on Economics with the Honorable David M. Walker.
Take care. Bye-bye.